Good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to all our esteemed participants joining us from across India and around the globe. As students, we are truly delighted to present this webinar, an initiative driven by passion, purpose, and a commitment to scientific awareness. On behalf of the Center for Scientific Research and Development, People's University, I extend a warm welcome to each one of you to the 14th session of the BioConnect webinar series. I am Asa Singh Chauhan, and I am proud to tell you that I am a BSc Biotechnology student at the Center for Scientific Research and Development, People's University. And it is my privilege to serve as the MC for today's program. It is indeed a great honor to host this insightful and intellectually enriching session. Today's webinar revolves around the highly relevant and thought-provoking theme, biosecurity in the 21st century, new WHO guideline, and global biothreat reduction. In an era where biological risk transcends border, this topic is of immense significance to researchers, policymakers, and future scientists alike. We are profoundly honored to welcome our distinguished dignitaries, esteemed speaker, and all participants to this academic gathering. A very special welcome to our esteemed speaker, Mr. Eric Cook from Sandia National Laboratories, USA. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor of People's University, Professor Dr. Harish Rao. Our mentor, Professor Dr. Subhat Bore, Center for Scientific Research and Development at People's University. The chairperson of the organizing committee, Ms. Kirti Vaswani. To formally inaugurate today's session, it is my honor to invite our Honorable Vice Chancellor of People's University, Professor Dr. Harish Rao, to deliver the opening remarks.
Thank you, Asta. Good afternoon, everyone. Distinguished speaker, respected faculty members, dear students, esteemed participants joining us from India and abroad, and members of the organizing team. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to the BioConnect webinar session number 14, a significant and timely academic initiative organized by the Center for Scientific Research and Development, People's University, Bhopal. Today's theme is biosecurity in the 21st century, the new WHO guidelines and the impact on global biothreat reduction. Is not only globally relevant but also deeply aligned with the responsibilities of modern universities in an era marked by rapid advances in biotechnology, synthetic biology, and life sciences research. Biosecurity is no longer a specialized concern. It is a global imperative. The release and implementation of updated guidelines by the World Health Organization represent an important milestone in strengthening global framework for biosafety and biosecurity. These guidelines serve as a reminder that scientific progress must always be accompanied by ethical responsibility, risk mitigation, and international collaboration. Universities and research institutions have a critical role to play in embedding a culture of responsibility, compliance, and awareness among young scientists. I am particularly proud that this webinar is conducted under the For the Students, by the Students initiative. A student-led academic platform reflects intellectual maturity, leadership development, and a proactive research culture. The students take ownership of academic dialogue on topics such as global biosecurity and biothreat reduction. It demonstrates the transformative role of higher education in shaping informed and responsible global citizens. We are honored to have with us Mr. Eric Cook, Principal Member of the Global Chemical and Biological Security Program at Sandia National Laboratory, USA. His expertise in global chemical and biological security will provide us with valuable insight into contemporary challenges and strategic framework for biothreat reduction. At People's University, we are committed not only to academic excellence, but also to to ensuring that our students, faculty, and researchers engage with globally significant issues. Platforms like BioConnect create opportunities for international dialogue, interdisciplinary learning, and exposure to global best practices. Congratulations to the six student team for meticulously planning and preparing for this webinar program. I commend Professor Dr. Subhash J. Bhore, Head of the Center for Scientific Research and Development, for consistently organizing meaningful academic activities and fostering a research-driven ecosystem within the university. To all participants, I encourage you to actively engage in the discussion, ask thoughtful questions, and reflect on how each of us, as scientists, educators, policymakers, and students, can contribute to strengthening biosecurity framework at institutional, national, and global levels. With these words, I officially declare BioConnect webinar number 14 open. I wish the webinar great success and a highly enriching celebration for all. Now I'll hand it over to our MC. Asta, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your inspiring and insightful words. Your constant encouragement and unwavering support for student-led academic initiatives are deeply valued and sincerely appreciated. I now invite the chairperson of the organizing committee, Ms. Kirti Vaswani, to say a few words. Ms. Kirti, over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Astha. Hello, everyone. Our esteemed guest speaker, Mr. Eric Cook, our Honorable Vice Chancellor of People's University, Professor Dr. Harish Rao, our mentor, Professor Dr. Subhash Bhore, respected dignitaries, respected faculty members, and dear fellow students. My name is Kirti Vaswani, and I'm proud to tell you that I am a BSc Biotechnology student at the Center for Scientific Research and Development, People's University, Bhopal, India. On behalf of the organizing committee, it is my privilege to welcome you to BioConnect webinar session number 14, a special student-led event organized by a dedicated team of biotechnology students at the Center for Scientific Research and Development, People's University, Bhopal, India. Today's webinar, titled Biosecurity in 21st Century, New WHO Guidelines and Global Biothreat Reduction, focuses on a topic that lies at the intersection of innovation and responsibility. We are deeply honored to have as our distinguished speaker Mr. Eric Cook, Principal Member of Global Chemical and Biological Security Program of Sandia National Laboratories, New Mexico, USA. On behalf of the organizing committee, I extend heartfelt gratitude to our Honorable Vice Chancellor of People's University, Professor Dr. Harish Rao, for his constant encouragement and for gracing this event with his presence and opening remarks. A special thanks to our mentor, Professor Dr. Subhash Bhore, for his guidance and support. I also wish to acknowledge and congratulate my fellow student organizers. Their teamwork, creativity, and commitment reflect the true spirit of People's University. With great pleasure, I welcome you all once again and I invite you to engage actively throughout the webinar. Let us look forward to an inspiring and insightful session ahead. Now, I will hand it over to our MC. Ms. Astha, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kirti, for your encouraging words. Esteemed guests, respected faculty members, fellow students, and distinguished participants. We now move to the core of today's program. To take the session forward, I now hand over to our moderator, Ms. Farisha Hassan. Ms. Farisha, over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Asta. Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to all participants joining us from across India and beyond. I am Varisha Hassan, and I'm proud to tell you that I am a BSc Biotechnology student and a member of this webinar's organizing committee at People's University, Bhopal, India. It is my privilege to serve as your moderator for today's insightful session organized under the BioConnect webinar series, an appreciable initiative of the Center for Scientific Research and Development at People's University. Today's session focuses on a topic of significant global importance in today's rapidly evolving scientific and public health landscape. The talk will focus on biosecurity in the 21st century, new WHO guidelines, and impact on global biothreat reduction. It is my privilege to introduce today's distinguished speaker, Mr. Eric Cook, a globally recognized expert in the biological safety domain. Mr. Cook currently serves as the principal member of the Global Chemical and Biological Security Program of Santa National Laboratories, New Mexico, USA. With more than 2 decades of experience in biosafety and biosecurity, Mr. Cook has worked extensively in global chemical and biological threat reduction. He has led international projects across multiple regions, conducted safety and security risk assessments of high containment laboratories, and mentored laboratories and government ministries worldwide. Importantly, he has collaborated with major international organizations such as the World Health Organization, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, International Civil Aviation Organization, and United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs in developing and strengthening international laboratory biorisk management guidelines and standards. He holds a Master of Public Health from Boston University School of Public Health. He is a certified biological safety professional, reflecting his deep technical expertise and leadership in the field. Today, he will share his insights on biosecurity in the 21st century, the new WHO guidelines, and the impact on global biothreat reduction. This is a highly relevant and timely topic, and we are truly honored to have him with us. With this very brief introduction, it is my honor to invite Mr. Eric to deliver the talk on biosecurity in the 21st century, new WHO guidelines, and the impact on global biothreat reduction. Mr. Eric, over to you.
Thank you so much to the organizing committee for inviting me and for organizing this important presentation. And I've been teaching and doing workshops all over the world in more than 40 countries over the past almost 20 years. And unfortunately, I have not had an opportunity yet to teach or to visit India, even though Sandia National Lab has done many programs jointly with the Indian government. I have not had an opportunity to be part of any of those projects. So this is kind of my first engagement with the Indian biotechnology students and biotech sector. And so thank you for that invitation. And I was thinking, as preparing this talk, what would kind of students know about biosecurity? So what is biosecurity? So what I'd like to do is just a quick poll, and I'm going to share, I have these kind of 5 or 6 definitions. And I'd like you to kind of read these definitions and let me know, maybe through chat. Is there a chat feature on Google Meets, Subhash?
Yeah. Chat feature is there. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So maybe in the chat, if you read these definitions, and I want you to select which definition you think is most appropriate for biosecurity, or which one speaks the most to you when you think about the word biosecurity. Which of these definitions most closely aligns with your understanding of what biosecurity is? So I want you to take a minute to kind of read these and put your answer in the chat. So for those that might not be able to read on the screen, I'll just take a brief minute and kind of introduce some of these. So the first definition, A, is measures taken to prevent the introduction and spread of infectious diseases. And it includes things like surveillance, vaccination, quarantine protocols. Usually these are measures undertaken by national governments to protect the population from spread of infectious diseases. And then the second definition is biosecurity involves practices designed to protect crops and livestock from pests and diseases. And so this includes things like controlling access to farms, implementing sanitation measures, and monitoring animal health. The third definition is protecting ecosystems from invasive species and pathogens that could disrupt local biodiversity. And so this particularly involves usually border security, so preventing food and maybe other things coming in from non-native species. So usually at the airports and at the borders, preventing pests from getting into your country. And then D is strategies to protect a country against biological threat, including bioterrorism and the misuse of biological research. And then E is measures and protocols implemented in laboratory settings to prevent unauthorized access, loss, theft, misuse of biological materials. And then the last one is preventing unintended spread of genetically modified microorganisms. And microorganisms and harm from biotechnology and genetic engineering spreading into the environment, and contaminating non-GMO crops or wild relatives. So which of those definitions do you think is biosecurity? So I'm getting a few. I've got some A and F, E. I'm going to wait for a few more people to give me some answers. Good, another A. So it looks like a majority of people are saying the first one, A. And what I might mention if you're trying to decide which is the correct answer, the truth is all of these definitions are used by various organizations to define biosecurity. And so different groups, like for example, the protecting crops and livestock, this is often referred to as farm biosecurity, and you'll find this definition among national, ministries of agriculture, protecting crops and livestock. They call this farm biosecurity. And then, the last definition, F, this is found in the Cartagena protocols for protecting from the spread of GMOs, and they call that biosecurity. And one of my favorite television shows that I like to watch is called To Catch a Smuggler, and often they'll have cameras set up and interviewing people trying to smuggle materials into various countries, and they do one in New Zealand. So in New Zealand, they have their biosecurity protocols where if you try to fly to New Zealand, because it's a protected environment, they don't want you bringing in any pests, insects, non-native species, plants, and even pathogens. So I think somebody has their microphone on. If we could make sure you all turn off your microphone. Thank you. All right. So all of these would be correct. But I want you to think about, when we think about this, what we call the spectrum of biological risks. So we have a number of risks that span from the natural occurring diseases. So we have pandemic outbreaks. We have re-emerging infectious diseases. So, for example, here in the U.S., we are struggling with measles, which because our vaccination rates, measles had been, for all intents and purposes, eliminated and was not a disease of concern anymore. And because of over the last decade or so, vaccination rates have really started to decline a lot, and people are refusing to get vaccinated. And so measles is reemerging as an infectious disease. And then we might have things like unintended consequences of research. So people doing research, maybe pathogens or other things in the laboratory might escape from the laboratory and spread. In fact, for I'm sure all of you are aware of COVID, and there is some speculation that COVID might have been the result of, research in the Wuhan Viral Research Institute, and perhaps might have been an accidental release from that laboratory. And then, it goes, the spectrum can go from the unintentional to the intentional. And so there may be cases, for example, when we talk about intentional release, like theft from laboratories or theft from vaccine manufacturers, and then also perhaps there could be state actors, countries that might be developing bioweapons want to acquire pathogens to intentionally harm others. And then you have your lone wolf extremists, individuals who might wish to cause harm or bring on an apocalypse or something like that. So there are cases for all of these that have occurred over the past several years. And then when we think about biological agents, or even, we use the term we might use the term biological weapons. When we think about weapons of mass destruction, there are basically three categories. You have your nuclear and radioactive weapons, you have your chemical weapons, and then you have your biological weapons. And biological weapons are unique when compared to other so-called weapons of mass destruction. For the most part, they're naturally occurring. So these will be found in the environment. So it's hard to tell. Like, for example, with COVID, was that an accident? Was it naturally occurring? Did it come from the environment, or was it perhaps modified or developed in a laboratory? And then a lot of, like, you can hide your chemical weapons, and it can be, but for biologicals, there's a lot of dual use, both the materials, the technology, the expertise, and so you can have. It's easy for a state or a country to hide their bio weapons development, so to speak, and also you could have an individual or a group that is acquiring equipment and building laboratories and doing research, and it could be easy to hide and for someone to claim that, oh, I'm just doing this for research, but really developing it to perhaps harm others. And then there's a wide variety of materials. We can have pathogens that can be deadly to pathogens that just make you sick. And so you have human pathogens, animal pathogens, zoonotic agents, and plant pathogens. All could be of big risk. And so sometimes people don't think of plant pathogens as bioweapons, but certainly disrupting agriculture could be a critical target for a bad actor. And then another big difference between biological agents is that it only takes a very small amount. So you don't need to steal a large quantity or produce a large quantity. You can, because they're self-replicating, you only have to release a little bit, and it can, if it gets established in the environment very quickly, it'll spread around the world. It's not detectable at a distance, so we have radiation detectors, we have chemical analyzers that can quickly, within seconds, tell you whether there is, what the concentration of a chemical agent is in the environment. But we don't have the same kind of tools that can detect pathogens as rapidly or at a distance. So you have to collect a sample and put it in an analyzer to identify it. And then you can find pathogens in many different types of facilities, from the pharmaceutical industry, private and public sector, research, clinical, hospitals. They're all over, and you can find pathogens and microorganisms at multiple locations in a facility, not just in the laboratory, but in storage areas. Perhaps if they're doing research with animals, they'll be in animal hosts, and you can even find them in the waste stream as well. And one thing I want to talk to you guys a lot about today is the synthetic biology, because this is what your generation and what where biotechnology is going is, we don't even need to obtain pathogens anymore from the environment. We can create them from de novo. And with genetic engineering and other biotechnology tools we have today, it's easy to turn a non-pathogenic material into a virulent organism. So, and then I think we're going to see, the pharmaceutical industry and the bioeconomy is really going to become a linchpin for the economic sector. And so, there is tremendous growth now, I know, in India, and the laboratory biotech sector is probably growing faster in India than in any other country. And so you guys are the future for this, and biotechnology is going to become, together probably with AI, the two critical linchpins in economic development. And I think will be the engine for that in the future. So really what I want to talk today about is biosecurity, and the definition I want to focus on really is laboratory biosecurity. And so we saw at the beginning, those 6 different definitions, and different sectors and groups use the term biosecurity very differently. But for my talk today, I kind of want to focus on this definition, which comes out of the WHO. And I'm going to talk about the World Health Organization because they've just recently published in 2024 a new updated laboratory biosecurity guidance. And I can provide links to that in the chat, or perhaps Subhash, you can look it up. You can just put a link to the document in the chat, and this is available freely to the world. And so these 2 definitions for biosafety and biosecurity, these are what come out of the WHO, and they're focused on laboratory. So biosafety are the continuum principles, practices, technologies to prevent unintentional exposure, and then biosecurity is everything in laboratories, policies, principles, technologies, and everything we do to prevent intentional or unauthorized access to loss, theft, misuse, diversion, or release, or even weaponization of biological agents. And so that's what we mean by laboratory biosecurity. So the first biosecurity guidance document by the WHO was published in 2006, and you can see I just put a listing of the sections or chapters from that first edition, and the second edition was released just recently, just in 2024, and the WHO has really changed. The new edition is completely different, and I think the risks are completely different today. And so that's why I kind of want to go through these. I'll just highlight a few of the important changes that have come in 2024, and look to how these will impact the future, and in particular the future of biotechnology as you guys are going forward, because really it's going to be up to your generation to help protect the world from many of these risks related to new and emerging biotechnology technologies and the threats that they pose. And so, really, those two chapters we see here, chapter 2 and chapter 3, are really new ones, and chapter 8 that I want to spend a little time talking about. So the first one is this concept of high consequence and gain of function, and you might have heard these terms: gain of function experiments related to maybe this could have been, if we kind of look at some of the conspiracies theories that are out there on the lab in Wuhan, although we don't have, I think the consensus is not there yet, but it's possible that research was being done to develop gain of function. So that means giving pathogens new abilities and new ways of infecting. And so this is how the WHO defines high consequence research. And they have in this section a whole series of recommendations for laboratories that do conduct high consequence research. I know that the Indian government has been working to increase the capacity for research, particularly these high consequence research on the Indian subcontinent, and I know there have been a number of laboratories, containment laboratories, that have been built or are being planned to be built around the country. And so these containment laboratories, this is where research with that could have high consequence, meaning if anything were to be released or escape from the laboratory, could have a significant consequence for exposure to the community. And so there's a lot of elements that go into the biosafety aspects of protecting research and also biosecurity, preventing unauthorized access in those laboratories. So this is kind of a definition of gain of function, and there are a lot of recommendations in the WHO around review and approval, and making sure that any of this research involving gain of function is strictly regulated and controlled and reviewed and particularly going forward. And then chapter 3, this is where there's a lot of new. This is where the future, I think, will be. And if you are going to read any part of this document, this is probably where you'd want to focus. The WHO guidance details, there's obviously a lot of benefits that are coming in biotechnology, a lot of many fields, from food, from health, from basic research and others that are coming from genetic engineering, synthetic biology, artificial intelligence, and things like that. And so while there's a lot of promise with these emerging technologies, there are many potential, even existential risks associated with biotechnology. And so your generation is really going to be the ones that are going to have to tackle and address some of these risks. And so in the WHO guidance, they kind of highlight these 6 key potential areas where disciplines, I guess, where we need as a international community need to put more thought into. So the first, kind of this genetic engineering And I'm sure as biotechnology students, you're familiar with what the definition of genetic engineering is, but some of the, the types or applications, one of the things that worries me a lot, we have, new tools in genome editing. You might be familiar with CRISPR. It's becoming easier and easier for researchers, even with less education, to even use these tools to edit genomes. One thing that really I think concerns me the most is these gene drives, where with certain modifications, it's possible to create genes that are not passed through, say, the typical uh, Darwinian evolution, survival of the fittest, but really you can turn on genes so that certain genes will be inherited at a higher frequency, even if those genes don't provide a benefit to the host. And so it's possible now through gene drives to actually eliminate entire species. You could that there are ways, theoretical ways, that we've identified where you can actually eliminate mosquitoes. And while it might be tempting to say, oh, if we get rid of mosquitoes, we get rid of malaria, we get rid of plasmodium, we get rid of a lot of there are a number of vector-borne diseases through ticks, through mosquitoes and others that, hey, and no one likes, mosquito bites. And so let's just get rid of mosquitoes. And we have the technology, we have the understanding to be able to do that now through genetic engineering, through gene drives, and through other methods. And but if we eliminate mosquitoes from the environment, that could there's a lot of animals that rely on mosquito larvae for food, and so it could disrupt food chains. And when you think about global warming and climate change, what the Industrial Revolution did for climate change, I think we're going to see 100-fold effect that genetic engineering could have on our future. And so we need to start now thinking about how genetic engineering and the new tools that we have, how they could impact our environment. And I think we have less understanding, even though we think we know. I think there's going to be a lot of consequences in the future that are irreversible. That and with the tools that we have nowadays, some of these things could fall in the hands of individuals making decisions, not governments or society making decision about whether they want these genes in their environment. And so these are big potential threats that are coming from emerging technologies. And then you have synthetic biology. This is a new discipline, and creating materials, creating life, creating synthetic biology. It's becoming more and more common, and the tools are developing, and it's becoming easier and easier. It's rapidly evolving. And there have been experiments where they've been able to create viruses from just chemical from chemicals. And so this is the capability, the accessibility, and the innovation is just growing exponentially in this field, and this is another big concern. And then, of course, AI, the use of AI in information technology systems. And there's a lot of, AI support now is being incorporated in laboratory processes, and these technologies carry the risk of misuse, and also our laboratory equipment. It allows for, with one of the new emerging things is cyber biosecurity. So this is where lab systems, lab equipment, even the machines that are used in laboratories now are susceptible to hacking and to misuse even from outside the laboratory. And then another consequence of emerging technologies and potential threats is this concept of DIY biology. So there's a growing movement, even among students, among other enthusiasts, and to conducting and doing biological research even outside of scientific institutions. So people building laboratories in their home or in their garage, and the technology is becoming so easy to use that and the equipment's getting cheaper and cheaper, that people can begin to do research and stuff in their homes. There's a competition, I don't know if you're familiar with, an international competition called iGEM, and they have competitions every year among students, college students and even high school students, on hacking, biohacking and building tools using genetic engineering. And they have a competition every year. And so even high school students now can create and do genetic engineering and create new technology, new tools, new things. And so, as this goes forward, it's not formal scientists with training and even following standards or ethics. It becomes easier and easier for people to access and use these. We actually had a case here in the US just recently of an unlicensed illegal lab discovered in California, and they had over 1,000 mice. Some were infected with at least 20 potentially dangerous pathogens. This laboratory was operated in a storage facility in an industrial complex, and no one even knew the lab was there, and it was being operated by a Chinese national. They didn't have a business license. It was unsanitary. They didn't have any proper waste disposal. And even today, the true purpose is unclear. No one knows why they set up this lab or what they were doing in the lab. And and just recently as well, we had a case just last week in Las Vegas, Nevada, where one of these homes that people were complaining about smells and other things, and they raided this house, and another person had a laboratory set up in their home, and same kind of situation. So could this happen in your own neighborhood? And as biotech students, you guys are learning, and it wouldn't be, I think as you look around, it wouldn't be that hard for you to acquire equipment and set up laboratories in your own house. And what can be done about it, from a national standpoint? Another thing to think about is the idea of misinformation and disinformation. And we saw this a lot with COVID. I don't know about India, but there was a lot of misinformation around vaccines, about the COVID vaccine, about the origins of COVID, and even disinformation. So misinformation are accidental, conspiracy theories, things like that. But disinformation are people who know better, who deliberately spread malicious falsehoods to try, for political reasons. Sometimes different countries, will spread disinformation as propaganda to try to disrupt activities in another country and things like that. And so disinformation can come from both state actors, but also from other groups that wish to influence policy, politics, and things like that. And then, as we know, people can be influenced by historical fears, and pop culture can have a big influence on people's perceptions and things of that nature. And then we have, chapter 4 is really talking about institutional management of biosafety and biosecurity. It talks about biosecurity policies for institutions, institutional biosafety, biosecurity committees, what their roles and responsibilities should be, the core roles and competencies of a biosafety or biosecurity officer. So prior to working at Sandia, I was a biosafety officer for many years at MIT and then at Dartmouth College. And so, most institutions should, at least in the US, it's a legal requirement for these institutions to have biosafety committees and biosafety officers. And I think that's something that's growing and increasing around the world. So yeah, research, universities, institutions, companies, and laboratories that do research or have these risks should have a committee. And so Section 4 of the WHO guidance document explains what the committee should be doing, what their activities should be, and how institutional committees, review committees, can help reduce risk and protect the community and others. So the Section 5 is all about risk assessment, and goes through the biosecurity risk assessment process. There are essentially 5 steps in a risk assessment, and really, this risk assessment process could apply to biosecurity, could apply to biosafety, could really apply to any situation where there's risk, it requires at least in a biosecurity risk assessment, a thorough analysis of potential targets. So we would call these assets. So what are the things that are valuable in our laboratory that a thief or a bad actor, a threat actor, might wish to target or steal or misuse? And then looking at who those potential threat actors are and what their tactics might be, and then identifying vulnerabilities. And that's really the essential part of a biosecurity risk assessment. When we do risk assessments in laboratories, these are some of the incidents that you have to kind of consider for your institution. You have theft, and then theft both from insiders, so somebody who kind of works for the laboratory. When I was at Dartmouth College, we had an incident where there was a group of students who were stealing chemicals and lab equipment from one of our chemistry labs. And they were using those chemicals and that equipment to produce drugs, actually, illegal drugs for consumption. And so, of course, they were caught and prosecuted and went to jail. But things like that can happen. People in laboratories with access to laboratories can steal equipment, can steal reagents and supplies, and in a biology lab could steal pathogens and other things. And so, those are some of the, when you're thinking of biosecurity incidents, you have to think of both the insiders, but also outsiders. So what are the groups that might target an institution? So for example, when I was at Dartmouth College, we had a group, a student group that were associated with PETA. So this is the protection of, it's an organization that is opposed to animal research and using laboratory animals. And one student got a job working in one of the animal laboratories and ended up releasing a few hundred research mice into the woods behind the laboratory. And now, we can laugh. Well, you can laugh because those mice are not adapted to survive in that environment. So it probably did more harm than good. But if those mice had been infected with anything, it could have been a serious problem. And so you have to look at who on your campus or who might be targeting your institution. What are they likely to steal? And it's not just a theft of biological agents or animals, but sabotaging the lab, creating power outages, or using equipment inappropriately, things and all of these things. So there's a whole gamut of risks, incidents, events that we have to prepare and think about when we think about protecting laboratories. And then these are just a few quotes I wanted to bring up, and a few incidents to think about. So you might recognize this picture. It was is many years ago. So this happened in Japan. This is the Aum Shinrikyo, and the Aum Shinrikyo, you might recognize them from a sarin gas attack on the Tokyo subway system. So this cult, they were an apocalyptic cult. So they believed that the world was coming to an end, and they wanted to accelerate that apocalypse. And so they wanted to create an apocalypse. And so one of the things, so they tried many different things. We know the sarin gas attack because hundreds of people died, and people were exposed in the subway, and it shut down the subway for a long time. Releasing a bio or a chemical weapon into the subway system. But before they had done that, they had actually done research. They had research labs, and as they investigated this cult, they discovered that the cult had set up a laboratory and were trying to culture Bacillus anthracis and also Clostridium botulinum, and then releasing those pathogens through the air. They had set up an aerosolizing unit on top of one of their buildings, and they were distributing or trying to distribute a cloud of bioaerosols in Tokyo. And it turns out fortunately the pathogen, the Bacillus anthracis that they had used, was not a virulent strain. It was actually one of the avirulent strains of Bacillus anthracis. So it didn't actually cause any harm or death, and it was not detected until after they had started researching the cult after the sarin gas release. But they were trying to develop a bioweapon, and they were trying to release it. And then in the upper right corner, these are actually actual pictures of the letters that were sent here in the U.S. in 2001. This was the Amerithrax. And then that was an insider. So Bruce Ivans was a researcher at one of the USAMRIID, one of the U.S. military laboratories, and he had gotten quantities of weapons-grade anthrax from the lab, and had grown it up and had distributed these letters. Some people think that Bruce Ivans, he had a patent on a vaccine for anthrax. And so some people think that maybe he did it for financial reasons. Hopefully, maybe he could benefit financially from the spread of people getting vaccinated. And then the last one on the lower right, this is actually a cult, I guess you could call them, from India. Actually, this was the Bhagwan Rajneesh, and he set up a community in Oregon in the U.S. And they were called the Rajneeshis. And although the Bhagwan Rajneesh himself was not necessarily involved, some of his followers had decided to try to influence the local election. They were trying to get more political power for their community, and so they had used salmonella that they had obtained from a culture collection in the U.S. They had obtained it legally, although under false pretenses. They'd grown the salmonella up in their laboratory, and then they had members of the cult went around and spread the salmonella in restaurants, in salad bars, and other locations throughout the community. And so the hope was to make people sick so they couldn't go vote, and that only the Rajneeshis would be able to vote, and therefore they would be able to win the election. This was not actually discovered for 3 years. They didn't know it was an actual bioterror attack. Over 800 people got ill, and it's to date it's the largest bioterror attack in the world that we know of. Over 800 people infected. Fortunately, no one died, but it was thought to be a natural outbreak. The CDC investigated, and it wasn't until for other reasons they were investigating the laboratory they found evidence that they had done this attack. So a few quotes on the right. I just want to point out the one from Bill Gates from 2018. He said, whether it occurs by a quirk of nature or at the hand of terrorists, epidemiologists say a fast-moving airborne pathogen could kill more than 30 million people in less than a year. And they say that there's a reasonable probability the world will experience such an outbreak in the next 10 to 15 years. And 2 years after he said that, we had COVID. Now with COVID, we've had, I think, 7 million deaths around the world, and more. It's still continuing. So some things to think about here. The next section in the WHO talks about how can we manage biosecurity risks, and they talk about kind of these 5 pillars of risk management. They span from physical security, so things like guards and cameras and fences and doors and locks. Personnel reliability. These are programs to ensure that the people who have access are trustworthy and ethical. And then material control and accountability. Those are inventory, keeping track of your materials. Security transport. So we often have to transport materials on the road. And so that's the 4th pillar. And the last one is information security. So protecting your information systems and protecting sensitive information about pathogens and things like that. Section 8, I won't go through all of them, but the last one talks about national and international legislation and regulations. And so in this section, the WHO lists some of the national and international laws that impact biosecurity. And I won't spend a lot of time on what those laws are. I know countries are developing new regulations. One of the things that we developed here in the U.S., I want to say 2000 was when it started, but it really came into effect in 2005. We have a national regulatory program, a registry. We call it the Select Agent Program. And so any research involving select agents, so these are agents designated by the U.S. government as highly sensitive, high consequence material, and relevant to biosecurity, you have to be registered with the government. And I was actually a biosafety officer at MIT at the time when these new laws came out. And one of my colleagues at Yale University, they had a case there where one of the professors was working with Yersinia pestis. And Yersinia pestis is one of these high consequence materials that require registration. And when the laboratory learned, oh, you're going to have to register all your work with the government, and institute certain training and notification requirements and other things, the professor said, well, I'm about to retire, and we're not really going to be doing a lot of research with this Yersinia pestis in the future. So he asked one of the grad students to just autoclave it all and destroy it. And then he reported to the IBC, to the Biosafety Committee at Yale, yes, we've destroyed all the material. We no longer have the Yersinia pestis. What the professor didn't know is the grad student, he took some of the samples and felt like, oh, well, this is really valuable stuff. I may want to do research with it in the future. It's a shame to get rid of it. And so he decided to keep some of the samples himself. And so he kept them actually in a refrigerator in the lab. He had a refrigerator at his desk. So he removed them from the storage area and just kept them in the regular laboratory. And he was one day, I guess, showing off or talking to a friend, and he said, oh yeah, I've got this Yersinia pestis, and he showed the friend the samples in his fridge, and the friend was really concerned about, wow, this is really dangerous stuff. You really think you should be having that? And so this was like a couple years after the law went into effect, and so the friend reported it to the safety committee to say, hey, this guy, did you know this guy has Yersinia pestis in his fridge? And the safety committee said, no. In fact, the lab told us that they destroyed all that. And so the safety committee went to the professor and said, hey, I thought you said you destroyed it. And the professor said, yeah, I thought we did too. And so they had to actually report that to the US government, and the US government opened an investigation, and they actually charged this student with violation of this Bioterrorism Act. And the student was facing, a decade in prison for his actions. And, fortunately it all got worked out, but, it was a pretty serious breach of these regulations. So we have those laws in the US, and I know other countries are looking at adopting those, and hopefully there'll be new laws and regulations. But one thing I can say about laws and regulations is that they are decades behind what's actually happening in the field. And so if you look at emerging technologies, synthetic biology, AI, and all the things we talked about before, I don't think that governments truly understand the risk, and the laws and regulations that they're trying to enact are by the time the laws are enacted, they're irrelevant, I think, to some of the risks. But at least in Chapter 8, the WHO does mention some of those laws and regulations that are out there, and encouraging countries to adopt more biosecurity laws, regulations. One thing I did want to mention, one law that has been enforced since 1970, well, was signed in 1972, became entered into force in 1975. It's the Biological Weapons Convention. India is a signed state that they've ratified and signed the agreement on the Biological Weapons Convention. And basically, the Biological Weapons Convention prohibits the development, production, stockpiling of biological weapons, agents, toxins, equipments by state parties. So governments are not allowed to have offensive biological weapons or weapons programs or develop weapons. Although I can tell you that after signing this, countries that had signed this, we found, for example, Russia, well, the Soviet Union had some accidents like the Sverdlovsk laboratory accident where, hundreds of people died from anthrax in Sverdlovsk. We didn't find out about this until the late 80s and early 90s, but there was definitely a bioweapons production facility in the city that resulted in, and they had an accidental release and resulted in the death of hundreds of people in the area from exposure. So we do know the Russians, the Soviets had an offensive bioweapons program at least until the early 80s. And we also know that Iraq, during that, they did have a bioweapons program. And there is suspicions around other countries developing bioweapons. And so, this is something that I think the Bioweapons Convention needs to be updated for the new century and needs more protections in place. These are basically the key provisions of the convention, and you can read more about this. I'll kind of skip past that. The last thing I kind of wanted to talk about is, some of you might be familiar with, like, from how do we prevent, when we look at prevention of nuclear weapons, for example, or prevention of, this is something I think India has been, India as a country has been really, involved in, particularly with your border with Pakistan and the concern about Pakistanis developing nuclear weapons. So really the prevention around preventing use of nuclear weapons is really around material acquisition, preventing countries from getting access to weaponized uranium, or high concentrated weapons grade plutonium, things like that. And so when we look at, preventing, for example, Iran from getting acquiring nuclear weapons, it's about preventing them from developing the weapons in the first place. From the biological side, more of the when we look at bioweapons and preventing the use of bioweapons, it's more around consequence management. So detecting attacks and being prepared in response and recovery. And I think when you look at biosecurity, it's less about, these days, particularly looking in the future, it's less about preventing people from acquiring pathogens, because as we know, it's almost impossible because the pathogens exist in nature. They're easily obtained. And with new biotechnology, it's becoming easier and easier to develop bioweapons, to develop genetically engineer pathogens to do what you want them to do. So really, as we look to the future, I think biosecurity is going to have to go more towards the right side of this this graph, in detecting. The earlier we can detect a outbreak, and develop and respond to that outbreak, the greater we can reduce the consequences. So I think with nuke weapons, it's around likelihood, preventing likelihood, and for biosecurity, it's really more, I think, around consequence management. So I'm going to finish here, and I've put my email up there if you guys have any questions. The website for Sandia, my group, is there as well, and I'll turn it back to our student team for the next part of our discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Eric, for your Thank you very much, Mr. Eric, for your insightful and comprehensive presentation. Your talk has highlighted several crucial dimensions of global health security that are increasingly shaping policies and response strategies worldwide. We will now proceed to the interactive Q&A session. Participants, please post your questions in the chat box or use the raise hand option if you would like to speak. While we wait for your questions, let me begin with a few to get us started. My first question is, from your perspective, what are the most significant shifts in biosecurity thinking reflected in the new WHO guidelines compared to earlier frameworks?
Yeah, thank you. So, like I mentioned, I think the biggest shift now is looking at really less about preventing acquisition and more about managing consequences, but also a big shift towards AI, towards emerging technologies. And, when I first started in biosecurity, it was all about, preventing a bad actor from stealing materials from laboratories. I think the assumption today is, bad actors can acquire these materials fairly easily, and the laboratory security aspects are not as emphasized now as the kind of the more of the bioethics and helping and really protecting information, because information on how to manipulate pathogens is more of a risk, I think, than the actual pathogens themselves, at least to a threat actor like a who has intentions to misuse pathogens. So I think that's where biosecurity is going today, and I think we see that reflected in the WHO document.
Thank you for highlighting those strategic shifts. Translating policy into practice is often the most challenging part. So, what do you see as the biggest practical challenges laboratories, especially in low and middle income countries, face when implementing these updated biosecurity recommendations?
Apologies, I lost connection there for a minute. My computer battery was dying. Can you repeat?
So, my question was that what do you see as the biggest practical challenges laboratories face, especially in low and middle income countries, when implementing these updated biosecurity recommendations?
Ooh, yeah. So I think in I think the biggest hurdle is awareness, really. I think, it's not, I don't think it's a matter of buying equipment. I don't think it's a matter of building, hiring guards, building really secure institutions. I think it's really getting awareness out, and it's really people power, building systems that where systems of trust, where you can ensure that the people who are working for your facility are ethical, are reliable, and have the right attitude around protecting and awareness that, often when we go into biotechnology, when we're thinking about disease diagnosis, people, I'm sure all of you are not going into this field to harm others. Really, you're going into it to protect, to build a better world. And so recognizing, though, that the work that you do, while you might be trying to save the world, some of the information and some of the techniques, technologies, and things that we create and information that we develop could be misused by others to create a lot of harm. And so awareness raising, I think, is the most important thing. And it doesn't cost really money. It's we're not asking you to like build really secure laboratories. It's really about committees and getting people to think about these things. And so establishing, I think my recommendation for low and middle income countries is establishing committees of people who are interested in biosecurity and can think about and adapt towards establishing training and awareness programs within their institutions and risk assessment, understanding the nuances of the risks that we face. So having risk assessment expertise and really researching and thinking about these things kind of outside the box, because we're focused on saving the world, but we need to recognize that what we do might have severe consequences for the world. It's the same thing when we think about AI and any new technology really has potential for really benefiting society, but also has significant, even existential risk. And what I mean by existential risk is could wipe out the human race, destroy the world. That level of risk is inherent in some of the new biotechnology that's emerging, and you as students need to be aware of that and ready to add your voice to how do we protect the world from these threats. So
My
yeah.
next question is, how can institutions better integrate biosafety and biosecurity into a unified biorisk management system rather than treating them as a separate compliance requirements?
Yeah, so I would go back to establishing committees. That's the first step, and diverse committees. So people from different backgrounds with different knowledge, different expertise, and including even in these panels, including students as well. Not just senior researchers or experts, subject matter experts, but you also need a public voice as well on that. There's also a new biorisk management standard called the ISO 35001. And Subhash, if you want to put a link, information on where to get more information about that. But this new standard really kind of highlights both biosecurity and biosafety and how to incorporate them into a management system. Yeah.
So, beyond policies and infrastructure, culture plays a critical role in biosecurity. So, in your experience at Sandhya National Laboratories and in international programs, how important is leadership commitment and organizational culture in sustaining biosecurity practices?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I went from university, Dartmouth College and MIT. I went from the university sector into the government sector. So Sandia is a government laboratory. And the culture shift was like 180-degree difference. So in a university setting, typically you have universities value openness, value sharing, value scientific discovery, and that's done through sharing ideas, sharing information, and so there's a lot of openness involved. And so, for example, if you walked down the hallways of MIT, laboratory doors are open. You can find equipment. It'd be really easy for me to walk into almost any laboratory and take whatever I wanted. There was not really a security mindset or even thought about security and or culture around that. And in once I got to Sandia, Sandia is actually started as a nuclear weapons design and development laboratory, and so the security around and the security culture within Sandia is extreme, I would say. And so um, I found that myself, I began to adopt those same security culture and thoughts and ideas. When I was a biosafety officer, there was a laboratory that I visited that had a lot of safety violations. The lab was not very well kept. It was always dirty. There were a number of violations. There were always problems with this laboratory. And I met with the PI, the professor, and I told him, I said, look, you have to clean up this mess. And if you can't clean up this mess, we may have to close your laboratory. And we were looking at sanctions against this professor, and he said, Eric, I've tried really hard, but the students in my lab, they just don't listen to me, and they don't really have an interest. I don't know how to fix this. And so what I did is I said, why don't we hire, so there was a laboratory manager for another laboratory. Why don't you bring that lab manager and put her in charge of the lab? And she completely changed the culture of the laboratory. And, I think sometimes having a strong leader who promotes safety and security in a facility can have a huge impact on the, if people in a laboratory see senior leaders in the lab, sees the PI, sees the lab manager and others behaving safely, they'll behave safely as well. But if they see the senior people in the lab, they don't care about safety, the researchers and the other people just do whatever is the culture in the lab. And so I think having a strong leader who demonstrates and through not just words, but through actions and through a commitment to safety, a commitment to security, that is a necessary component. And I used to think that I used to work for a company that manufactured packaging for infectious substance shipping. And I used to think that 99% of the risk was could be mitigated by having proper packaging. So as long as you had the proper infrastructure, as long as you had the proper equipment, the proper PPE, and the proper material, you could that eliminated 99% of the risk. But in my experience in visiting laboratories all over the world and in teaching infectious substance shipping, I have completely changed my mind. And to me, it's not the equipment, it's not the infrastructure, it's not the HVAC system or the PPE that protect people. It's the attitudes, the behaviors, and it's how people actually use the equipment. It's really human factors that reduce 99% of the risk. And so you might have seen this in COVID, where people, wearing masks, and we saw that, masks protect some people, but not others. And I think it could come down to how people actually wear the mask and how they use. Are they washing their hands after they take the mask off? Are they, taking the mask off properly? Are they wearing the mask properly? Are they pulling it down? Are they constantly touching their face? In fact, mask use can actually increase risk if, of exposure if people are not using it properly. And so it's not the equipment, it's not the infrastructure, it's the people, it's their attitude, it's their behavior. I used to think it was people's knowledge and experience that contributed to risk reduction. And it's not knowledge, it's not experience, it's behavior, it's attitude. And you'll see this on the roads, people driving. People can have knowledge of the driving laws. They can know all of the rules and laws and regulations around driving, and behavior on the road. People can have years and years of experience driving, but that doesn't make them safe drivers, and that doesn't make the road place a safe place to be. It only becomes safe when people adopt safe behaviors. So it's not their knowledge, it's not their experience, and it's not even their equipment, that the vehicles that they drive. It's how they drive, it's their behaviors, it's their attitudes, it's their ethics, it's their you know, somebody might say, hey, I'm the best driver in the world, but are they actually following the laws? Do they stop at crosswalks? Are they defensive in their driving attitudes? And so really, I think it's people and behaviors and attitudes and ethics that determine safety and even security, and not the equipment and the you can build the most expensive, most beautiful, high-tech lab in the world, but if you have people who are not following safe behaviors and have bad attitudes and poor culture around security and poor culture around safety, all of that equipment and infrastructure is useless.
So we are now in an era of rapid advances in synthetic biology, gene editing, and AI-assisted research. So how do you think emerging biotechnologies are reshaping global biothreat landscapes, and are the international guidelines keeping pace with these developments?
Yeah, I would say absolutely not. I think I'm really worried about the future. Actually, it keeps me up at night a lot. And I really think, when you think about things like climate change and global warming and all of this, we think this is a real threat to society. And, if we could go back to the 1800s, if we could go back in time and say, look at uh, what burning fossil fuels is going to do to our future. We are just starting to see the effects of that now, but the effects on our children and grandchildren are going to be immense. And I believe that through technology, I have a positive belief in the future, at least as far as climate change, that we'll figure something out that will be able to mitigate a lot of these risks. But when it comes to biotechnology, we're in the industrial revolution right now. We're in the middle of, let's build factories, let's expand, let's burn fossil fuels. We're in that phase of not understanding the risks. And I think it'll be 100, maybe 50, 100 years from now, people look back and say, I wish the scientists back then had not done these genetic changes. Genetic manipulation to human genome, genetic manipulation to our animals, to our plants, all of these things. There will be consequences in the future that we can't see now, that will be 100 to 1,000 times worse than what climate change is today. And so I don't think our laws and I know and our society is doing what it takes. And I see this in AI. People are more concerned about profit than they are about the existential threats that these could, and the changes it'll make to our society are just unknowable and unpredictable. And I think we're going to see the same things with genetic engineering and synthetic biology and all these things. Great potential, but great risk as well.
So, as many of our participants today include students, early career researchers, and laboratory professionals, what advice would you offer to young scientists and biosafety professionals who wish to contribute meaningfully to global biosecurity and biothreat reduction efforts?
Well, I think you guys are doing that now. I mean, participating in these types of student forums is exactly, getting educated on the issues, reading, researching. Um, I really appreciate Subhash and People's University and this committee for providing a forum to discuss and learn about these things. Um, and you guys are going to be the leaders that are going to be impacting these decisions in the future. And in many ways, the future is now. But uh, the more educated you guys become, the more you share this information with others, um, the more the more we as a society can understand these threats, and the more you can educate others about them. Uh, I think the more the world becomes aware of it, the more likely we are to maybe identify risks and foresee trouble. So I kind of think of this as like we're scattering seeds around the world, and we're hoping some of those seeds will grow, and you guys are those seeds, and hopefully maybe a few of you will be really interested in this topic, and we'll go do some research and learn some more, and then help educate others.
So my last question is that we have collaborated with global agencies and multiple national governments. What role should international partnerships, such as those involving WHO and other multilateral bodies, play in strengthening global biosecurity harmonization?
Yeah, I mean, I think the WHO has done a lot with releasing this new laboratory biosecurity guidance, and I think it's important for governments to cooperate. There's a real problem, I think, around biosecurity, and that is there's we need to share information, but then we also have to protect information, because if information gets in the wrong hands, it can lead to serious consequences. And when you look at governments, and I see this even within the U.S. government, and many other governments, rather than when it comes to biosecurity, rather than cooperate, people are trying to, I think, withhold and secure and prevent, and not share. And I saw this with COVID, for example. Let's assume now that COVID was completely accidental, came from the wet market in Wuhan. It was not laboratory acquired, did not come from a laboratory, and none of the research that was going on in the Wuhan Virology Institute had any impact on this outbreak. Even so, since COVID, the Chinese government has hid all the information and has not allowed any access to critical information around activities that were going on in the Wuhan lab. And I don't blame the Chinese. I'm not saying that what they're doing is wrong, because there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation, and people can take information and they can twist it, and they can, and China doesn't want to be blamed for COVID. And so governments see what happened there, and they're, and even what I'm recommending when it comes to biosecurity is, and this kind of emerging field called cyber biosecurity, is really around protecting information and preventing information from getting in the public. And as you guys go forward and start working in biotech companies, the same principles apply. Biotech companies don't want their technology that they're creating and developing released, or that information getting out to competitors. And so, there's a real need to try to hide or restrict information, and I think that can have a negative impact on the world getting involved and understanding the risks that we face. So it's a conundrum that I haven't figured out myself, that I'm trying to navigate, how to approach this. Um, how much information to share, how much information to keep um, secure, and what information to keep secure. And that is one of the big questions that's going to be facing us as a society, but even specifically you as you go into careers in biotechnology. Um, you're going to face that same question and dilemma. And hopefully, um, by becoming aware of the issues now, it'll help prepare you for the future.
Hello, participants. Do you have any questions? If yes, please unmute yourself and ask questions. All right, fellow students and esteemed participants, that concludes with a truly enriching discussion. Thank you, Mr. Cook, for your sharing your valuable insights and practical wisdom. Your experience across institutional, national, and international levels provides us with a comprehensive understanding of how biosecurity must evolve in the 21st century. And to all of our participants, thank you for your active engagement. With that, I now hand the session back to our MC. Thank you. Ms. Asta, over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Varisha, for expertly moderating today's session. As we approach the conclusion of this enriching session, I now invite Ms. Nandini Pal to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the entire organizing team. Ms. Nandini Pal, over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Astha. Good evening, everyone. Due to some unforeseen reasons, Ms. Nandini Pal is unable to attend the virtual session today. Therefore, I will proceed on her behalf. It is indeed both an honor and privilege to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of organizing team and the Center for Scientific Research and Development, People's University. As we draw the curtains on today's enriching session of BioConnect webinar series, first and foremost, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished guest speaker, Mr. Eric Cook, for graciously taking time out of his busy schedule to be with us today. His insightful presentation on biosecurity in the 21st century, new WHO guidelines, and the global biothreat reduction has been truly enlightening. We are sincerely grateful for the knowledge and wisdom you have shared with us. We also extend our sincere thanks to the Honorable Vice Chancellor of People's University, Professor Dr. Harish Rao, for his presence and encouraging opening remarks. Sir, your continued support is highly appreciated. Our heartfelt appreciation goes out to all the respected dignitaries who joined us today. Your presence has added immense value and significance to this event. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to our mentor and guide, Professor Dr. Subhash Bhore. Sir, your vision, guidance, and constant support have been the driving force behind this webinar series. Your mentorship continues to inspire, empower, and motivate us. We thank our moderator, Ms. Varisha Hassan, for skillfully moderating the session. I would like to take a moment to highlight the essence of BioConnect, a for the students by the students initiative. It stands as a testament to the remarkable heights passionate learners can reach when given a platform to explore, question, and grow. Through this series, we not only gain insights from global experts but also nurture a vibrant academic community driven by collaboration and curiosity. To our ever enthusiastic audience, thank you. Your participation and engagement and thoughtful questions brought energy and substance to today's session. Your presence truly makes all the difference. And finally, we express our most profound appreciation to the management of People's University for their unwavering support and encouragement. Your belief in student led activities such as the BioConnect webinar series enables us to dream big and achieve more. With that, I now hand it over to our MC to continue with the proceedings. Again, thank you. Ms. Astha, over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Kirti, for beautifully expressing our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed dignitaries, distinguished speaker, and all participants who made this session a success. Esteemed participants, before we conclude, we kindly request you to spare 2 to 3 minutes to fill out the post-webinar feedback form. The feedback link has been shared in the chat box. Your valuable feedback and suggestions will help us improve and enhance the quality of our future sessions. Kindly note that feedback form submission is required to get certificate for attendance. We will now pause for 2 to 3 minutes to allow you to submit your feedback. We hope you have successfully submitted the feedback form. Please note your e-certificate will be sent to the email ID provided in the feedback form. Once again, we sincerely thank you all for your enthusiastic participation in this enlightening and enriching session. On behalf of the organizing team, we extend our deepest gratitude to each one of you for being part of this intellectually stimulating webinar. We look forward to your active participation in the upcoming session of the BioConnect webinar series. Until we meet again, stay curious, stay inspired, and continue building meaningful connections through science and learning. This is Asha Singh Chauhan signing off on the behalf of the organizing team at People's University Bhopal, wishing you a pleasant evening and continued success in all your future endeavors. Thank you.